So we're all pretty addicted to coffee. We all live on the stuff. And globally, we consume 2 billion cups every single day. And demand is only going up. So we're predicted to drink an extra 20% by 2020. However, coffee production is going down, which causes an obvious problem. We're all about to be deprived of this thing that fuels us. So coffee is kind of fussy. It only grows in specific environments. So it likes to grow between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. It likes temperatures of between 15 and 24 degrees, so pretty much like I do. And it likes high altitude. It likes lots of rainfall, but not too much rainfall. It doesn't like to be drowned out. The problem is, with climate change, the areas that are suitable for coffee production are decreasing. So increased temperatures cause crops to fail, so you don't get as many coffee beans from each plant. It causes an increase in bitter compounds, which makes the coffee that we drink taste bad. And it also creates an environment in which pests and disease and fungus can thrive, which all destroy the coffee. So Brazil, which is the world's greatest coffee producer, is predicted to lose around 25% of its coffee production area by 2050. And that's quite a long way away. However, we're already seeing losses. So India lost 30% of its coffee production area between 2002 and 2011. So climate change is a big problem, and it requires a big solution. And last year, global leaders all committed to seeing an increase in temperature of no more than 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. However, climate change is also an everyday problem, which is caused by the cumulative effects of the everyday actions taken by all of us and businesses as well. And therefore it requires an everyday solution and little things that we can all do. In the same way that the cumulative effects of little actions create the problem, cumulative effect of little solutions, little things that we do every day, can help to mitigate against the problem a little bit. So I'm here today to talk to you about the little things I do as a small business owner to try and reduce my own environmental impact. And I'm the co-owner of The Roasting House, which is a small coffee roastery based in Nottingham. And we source coffees from all around the world. And when we're reading about these coffees and we're researching them, we read about the different things that coffee suppliers do to try and reduce their own environmental impact. Take, for example, Eduardo, who is the owner of Fazenda Dona Nenem in Brazil. Eduardo states that the environment is the most important thing in his business, and so he sets aside part of his farm, which is only for conservation. He also maintains a watercourse area, which is where no coffee production is allowed to take place. And this protects the water sources, so the rivers and streams, from being contaminated, which would affect fish, wildlife, and also farms further downstream. And he's a former engineer, so he uses this machine here to weigh the coffee cherries during the harvest time and only pick the ripe ones from the plant. And this reduces waste, so the cherries aren't quite ready for picking yet, are left on the plant. They don't go into waste. And he'll go over each harvest, he'll go over the crops each harvest a couple of times with this machine before finishing by hand. This is his farm. And he also recognises the importance of a healthy workforce in having a sustainable farm. So he pays a fair wage and he pays an end of harvest bonus, which is based upon the prices that he gets for the crops that they help to pick, which is important because most of them are migrant workers who will travel from farm to farm during the season. And outside of that season, there's no work, they have no income, and they often go hungry. So what we do is we try and source our coffee responsibly. So these are some of the places that we've had coffee from recently as part of our coffee club. So every fortnight we get a different coffee from a different farm. And we're looking for farms who have practices like Eduardo's to do things to try and reduce their environmental impact and look after the people who help to grow the coffee. We also look for things like Rainforest Alliance certification and fair trade, although these aren't always perfect schemes, so lots of small farms can't always afford them or they don't think it's worth it. So we look more at what they're doing rather than whether or not they have a stamp, but they are useful things. So So we also take care to package our coffee responsibly. So we put it in paper packaging, which is recycled and recyclable. And this sort of helps to reduce the impact of the packaging, because coffee is typically packaged in combined materials, which is usually paper and plastic or plastic with foil. And these combined materials will also have a valve which lets the coffee breathe, which is quite important, as coffee creates gases during the roasting process. However, this packaging is problematic because it can't be recycled, so individually the layers might be recyclable. But once you combine them, most British recycling facilities aren't able to separate them again, and so they go to landfill. And the valves themselves, that's the inside of the valve, they can't be recycled at all. So by using paper packaging, we kind of mitigate against that. But we also want to make sure that the customers, even though we want to meet our environmental aims, we want our customers to have the best possible coffee. So this one, we use fresh roasters. We built our business around this, basically. So we use small roasters to roast freshly to order. And this means that we can get our coffee straight out to the customer after it's been roasted, and therefore we don't need the preservative packaging. It's not sitting around waiting to be sold. And we also make sure we do experiments. So we tested our theory out by roasting up a batch of coffee, and we place it in different bags. So we have a lined bag that has a vent, a lined bag that doesn't have a vent, and also our own paper packaging. And we did a blind taste test on this coffee to see if it does make a difference to have the kind of plastic-based packaging or if the paper packaging works well. And we find that the lined bag that doesn't have a vent made the coffee taste bad, so obviously you do need to lose those gases. However, the bags with the vent, the lined bag with a vent, only had a significant improvement in taste after a longer period of time, so after a week, which we'd expect because coffee starts to lose its oils and degrade. It's a food product, and therefore it makes sense to preserve it. However, because we get it out straight away, it means that we don't need that preservative packaging. It's with our customer before it starts to degrade. Then they can put it into a reusable container, and we don't need a single-use bag that breaks down. So we're kind of happy with using the paper on that basis. We also only send our coffee out in whole beans or ground and never in pods, as pods can't be recycled, they're single-use, and also they typically contain more packaging just within the pod itself than for the coffee inside, which has knock-on effects because you need more fuel to transport it then. We also deliver all our coffee by bicycle locally. So last year we cycled over 3,000 miles, and that saved over a tonne of carbon dioxide from entering the atmosphere compared to a small car. Obviously coffee is heavy, and there's a lot of hills in the area that we live. So last year we introduced an e-bike, which is not cheating if you're carrying a load of coffee, I say. And that really helps to carry the weight and also flattens out the hills a little bit. And there are obviously benefits of cycling, so it keeps us fit and healthy. And we have hired a vehicle to do our deliveries if one of us is ill or the weather is really bad. And we found that it takes just as long because you can't take those little nip-throughs and shortcuts that you can on a bike. And it's also a lot more fun to whiz down a hill on a bike than it is in a car. So we also take care of the very, very little things. So last year we saw some paper tape, and we use this to package our parcels. However, we found in winter it loses its stick, which is not really very good. The parcels started to come undone. So now we have 100% recycled plastic, which can't be recycled again, but at least it's come from a recycled source beforehand. And we do things like we have a zero waste to landfill policy, which informs a lot of our purchasing decisions. So we'll do things like the labels that we stick on our bags. They all have a recyclable backing. And the waste that we produce from our coffee roaster, so it produces chaff, which is wrapped around the beans, all of that goes into our own compost, along with any coffee grinds that we use ourselves, although you can use those as a scrub as well, which is kind of handy if you're tinkering with bikes a lot. So these are all very, very small things. Just using a bit of packing tape or just going on one bike ride isn't very much, but cumulatively they do add up. So over a period of time and over lots and lots of orders, they add up to one bigger thing. And these are all things that we can all do. We could all maybe experiment in our businesses to see what kind of things we could do, or We could perhaps see if we could maybe consider doing bike rides instead of deliveries by a car, or making some small local journeys by bike or by foot instead. And there's quite a lot of people in this room. And if we all do those little tiny things, we all make those little tiny changes, it all adds up to a much bigger thing. And together we can all achieve something a little bit bigger, and maybe together do something to try and prevent the worst impacts of climate change. Thank you.